From the KELOLAND Digital Desk, I'm meteorologist Scott Mundt, and it is time for Whether or Not, Brian, on a Tuesday.
On a Tuesday. Good morning and good afternoon. It's been a pleasant morning. I think these sunrises, too, have been spectacular.
They have. We should probably keep some of those because it will be limited until we change the clocks again, right?
Well, true enough. And one thing I will say about the weather today, we've had a few clouds and a little bit of rain on radar. We're going to be talking about that subject in the show today because there are areas of rain in the forecast. And in fact, that's even how you're going to lead off here today.
Yeah, the rain amounts that we've had over the summer, and we'll also try to compare that to what we've had during the year, too, for a couple of select cities across KELOLAND. The important holiday weekend, we have our forecast coming up for that. And, of course, we'll probably end with the pattern, what's going on now, what's different than what it was showing yesterday. For today, as Brian mentioned, we've had a couple of showers in southeastern South Dakota this morning. These will continue to drift off to the southeast. We'll see if we have any hold during the afternoon, but I do expect mostly dry conditions until maybe late tonight toward daybreak tomorrow. We can see another flare-up of scattered showers in southeastern South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota. Again, that's late tonight into early morning for tomorrow. Today's forecast will be warmer than what we had yesterday, as we'll have high temperatures in the 70s and 80s, widespread 80s in central and western South Dakota. Stay with us. We have plenty to talk about on this latest edition of Whether or Not. Welcome back to Whether or Not. It's time to talk about rain amounts across KELOLAND, and we'll break this down to our monthly rain so far. And I know there are a couple of days left in August, and guess what? That goes right into Labor Day, and that brings in another round of rain. But here's where we are so far for the month. As you see, around 2 2/3 of an inch in Sioux Falls and 5 1/4 in Watertown. And look at Huron, approaching 7 inches of rainfall for the month. We'll have a breakdown of that coming up in a bit. Around 3.5 in Aberdeen, 2.5 in Pierre, and western South Dakota has been missing out. 1.5 Rapid City, about 1/2 inch in Pine Ridge, and northwestern South Dakota, Buffalo, 1 1/3 inches. Now, when we look at how that compares to the monthly averages, we're about average in Sioux Falls, 1/10 of an inch officially below average, but Huron's about 4 3/4 above. Watertown's close to 3 inches above. They've been above average all summer. Mitchell at about 1/3. And it's western South Dakota that's been below, about 1/3 in Rapid City, 3/4 below in Pine Ridge, and Mobridge at about 1 inch below. But I do want to break this down for Watertown to start, and then eventually going into Huron, as it's been very wet for this month, and we'll probably get more rainfall as we finish out the month of August. But here's Watertown, and I'll just show June, July, August. We've had a lot of rain in and around the Watertown area. Along with it, we've had our severe weather, close to 6 inches. That goes back to the month of June, and that's 2 inches above the climate average. As we take a look at July, we've had rainfall as well as, of course, the severe weather toward the end of the month. And that was baseball-size hail reported on the 27th, as well as that Henry tornado. Watertown itself had a wind gust of 71 miles per hour on the 27th. And for the month, that total, 6 2/3 of an inch of rainfall, well above the climate average by 3 2/3 of an inch. How are we doing for the month of August? Well, we've had heavy rain, again, over 5 inches, and we still have about a week to go. The average for the whole month in August in Watertown is just shy of 3 inches. And, of course, we dealt with the severe weather again at the beginning of the month, that 70-mile-per-hour wind or near there on the 5th, as well as that near 100-mile-per-hour wind for Sandy Shore. So a lot of rain, a lot of severe weather in and around the Watertown area during the summer. This is Huron. For June, they were a little below by about 1/2 inch, but I'd say, decent rains, and it was spread out, too. We didn't get more than, 6 days there from the 6th, from the 6th of June to the 11th, where we had dry conditions, but then we picked up 1/3 of an inch there on the 12th. And then we just had some steady rains as we went through the month of June. How about July? July was a little bit above average with a total of around 3 inches of rainfall. And the one that stands out is the 23rd of July, close to 2 inches. That set a record for the daily amount of rainfall. That's why it's highlighted in red. But here's the month, the one that we're currently in, that really stands out. Okay, the total in Huron alone, close to 7 inches. And as you look at the climate average for the month, it's a little over 2.5 inches. And, we got shy of 2 inches on the 22nd of the month. And you see some heavier rains again with over an inch for the day on the 16th, on the 14th. But when you add the 16th and the 17th together, that is approaching 24, not 24, but 2 inches of rainfall. So a lot of rain fell during the month, or has fallen during the month in Huron. And it looks like that will probably continue as we round out the month and we go into this holiday weekend. As far as the where we stand for the year so far, so this is obviously going back since January 1st. Seems like during the summer, and I've had this question to me before, with all the rain we've had during the summer. Oh, we have to be above average for when you look at the year. Well, not necessarily. Keep in mind we had that one day where Sioux Falls Airport reported a trace of an inch, while the east and southeast side had rainfall amounts of 2 to 4.5 inches. So that one doesn't go in the books when you look at the climate stats, because of we take the official report coming in from the airport, and that day it came in at around a trace. So when you look at the yearly precipitation and how we're doing, we're still below officially in Sioux Falls by about 2.5 inches. Watertown, of course, well above, over 9 inches of rain. Aberdeen, over 5 when you look at the whole year. And Huron, thanks in part to what's happened over the past couple of weeks, they're now above average when it looks at the yearly rainfall or precipitation at 2 2/3 above. And western South Dakota, below in Rapid City by an inch. Pine Ridge, about 1.5 inches below. A third below in Pierre, and just over an inch below in Winter. So we've had some rains for some of us. Some, of course, receiving more than they want, and others can still use some rain, especially across southwestern South Dakota, even sneaking into central and south central KELOLAND. So as I've been mentioning, we do have more rain in the forecast as we do get into this weekend, and then we'll see what happens as we get into the month of September. And, of course, September starts meteorological fall. And we'll see what happens as we begin September as we take a look at our weather pattern. That's coming up next as we continue on Whether or Not. Welcome back to Whether or Not. Brian, it's always interesting talking about the weather pattern. And what we usually show through our graphic system is the next 2 weeks. But we also looked at things behind the scenes that obviously can go out a little farther than that.
Oh, yeah. We can go out a few weeks if we want to. Which
months if we want to. I mean, depending on how far you want to go out, there are some seasonal outlooks out there.
True enough. Yep.
But don't always pan out, obviously. It's weather.
And it's always that funnel effect, right? As you look at things way out, you're looking for general broad patterns. And then as you get into a 2-week forecast, hopefully can narrow down, some timing issues, generally speaking. And yeah, that's how the weather goes as you get closer and closer.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at our 2-week pattern then. This, again, is the 500 millibar. We're more or less slicing the atmosphere in half, where we have troughs, ridges, high pressure, low pressure. And it seems like there are a lot of things trying to dance through the area, which means, I would say unsettled weather for us. And as we get into that first week and a half of the month, there's something trying to crash on shore on the western United States. You see it right there, and it settles near California. And we'll have to watch that as we get into maybe the middle of the month. But as that happens, that typically helps us warm. And I really think that will eventually happen for us here in KELOLAND. We'll see what happens, though, as we are looking at our chances for rain. And as long as these temperatures go back and forth, I think that should keep a steady chance for rain with us, Brian. Unfortunately, it looks like it wants to happen for the holiday weekend.
Right. And that's where, the details are going to become pretty important, because by Friday, we're already looking at rain in western South Dakota. Saturday, it spreads a little farther east, and then it's a very slow progression as it goes eastward.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get into our weekend forecast. So along with the chance for rain, of course, with the thicker cloud cover, you can expect temperatures to be a couple of degrees below average. Some will be above for a time or two, but I don't think that will last long. That will be short-lived. And it wants to linger slightly below average air as we get into next week. And then for the following weekend, this is a lot different than what it was showing yesterday. Now it's trying to warm us, but I think we should maybe proceed with caution. Because, what it was showing yesterday, it was trying to cool us, and now it's trying to warm us. But this is only one model that we are showing to the public. Behind the scenes, we could look at other models, and I don't know if you have any of those ready on your end.
Well, I was looking at the Euro, the AI version of the Euro here. So this is a look at its precipitation forecast. And what's interesting here, and I like to talk a few more details. So let's zoom in here on our region. So what do we see on the picture here? Well, tonight, tomorrow morning, do you see that little bit of green and the gray there across southern Minnesota, northern Iowa? And that's kind of sprouting into our forecast. That's why we put a 20% chance of rain in the outlook, because we think there's enough forcing there to support some of that. And then as you kick this out into Friday, there's western South Dakota. That's some rain there. And then Friday night into Saturday, and it moves a little farther east. And you get into Saturday night, you've got the James Valley, but look at the position of that. That's even down into northern Nebraska, and then it slowly kind of stretches out over us into Labor Day. So is it raining all the time? No, but it's persistent. There's just a low there, so it can spark some rain chances. And then, Scott, as you mentioned here, you go into the forecast for temperatures. Let me do this for a moment. We'll just bring up the temperature anomalies. So this is looking at above or below. So remember, blue and green is below, red, orange is above.
And this is off the AI version of the Euro.
Yes. Yep. So, let's start from the beginning. There's today's map. There's all your deficits, right?
Look at the difference there near Des Moines.
Yeah, 16 degrees below average for lows at least. And those temperatures, again, it kind of washes out a little bit. So you get, toward tomorrow and beyond, we're kind of in the middle. We're pretty close to average, even above normal the farther north you live. And then with that rain chance, see what it does. It brings in some blue, and at times that's Sunday.
Sunday around 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right. Yep, so that makes a lot of sense. And if I pull the view out just a little bit, you can see it connects broader with some rain in Texas. So the midsection of the country can be below average, but isn't it something how to our northwest, how hot it's been? And we do get some spillover effects, maybe a little bit here and there in the northern part of South Dakota. But then here we go again, another cold front, and that's after Labor Day. So that would run about the 3rd of September. And it's interesting to kind of watch those, the rhythm of the weather forecast. This model run tends to kind of keep us a little warmer than normal, but I still think there's a lot going on there at that point. I'm not ready to glue in on any of that yet.
Okay, now just as an example, I know you're looking at the 6Z run. There you go. See how much different things go from, just 6 hours on some of these model runs?
Yeah.
So we can't get glued to one particular solution at all. We have to, take into account, sure, okay, it is showing some colder air coming. Let's see what the next model run says, and then we'll pick up on some sort of a trend.
I always think, too, change of the seasons. This is an old standby rule with forecasting, but when you get to a point where you start changing seasons, so it's fair to say, right? We're going from summer to an early fall-like pattern. Modeling tends to struggle a little bit with that. Now, if you look at other parts of the year, I would say like going from winter to spring, when we're dramatically changing, like in March, that's when the models really, they have to play catch up a lot because the average high is going up so quickly. And,
it's snow on the ground that it, doesn't necessarily have in its data set, maybe.
Correct. Yeah. There's a whole laundry list of factors that go into that. But I can argue right now, we're kind of now starting to stretch the modeling a little bit on, okay, so we've got these cold fronts. How are we going to handle that with the fact that we've got all this heat on the West Coast and the ridging? And so the modeling data is trying to struggle a little bit with that concept. So just kind of let that simmer in the background. I think that's fair to say. And we'll probably get a dose of both would be my estimate.
We always talk about, they struggle to pick up on the cold air. And we're going into a colder part of the year right now, too, as you just mentioned, going into summer, the fall. So they'll have a hard time picking up on, these temperature differences.
We were commenting, too, about the European model seasonal forecast. Okay, back when we started the summer, the European model had pretty much the whole country above normal, the midsection of the country well above. It was advertising of an extremely hot summer here. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of piled onto the concern about, well, what's it going to do this summer with the drought, the pre-existing drought? And then wasn't it interesting how the rains came, and in some cases they haven't stopped. It's been wet, very wet summer for parts of our region, but the rain correlated with the temperature. We were able to knock down those highs at times, just enough to kind of level things out. And so instead of having a blowtorch, blazing hot summer, we've had a warm summer, overnight lows especially, pretty warm, but we thankfully reduced that heat enough to take the edge off. So now into fall, we just kind of keep that bias in mind. Like, okay, well, if it's suggesting mediocre, maybe middle of the road, does that mean then we're going to be cooler than that suggests again for the next 3 months?
Well, and I remember going into the summer, just because it was so dry, when we were watching Texas. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Going into summer, in the early part of the summer, as they were dry and they were expected to heat up, and usually that, the heat dome would expand and eventually go into the central and the northern plains. But, that, kind of held back a little bit as we were able to bring in, as you mentioned before, these timely rains. That helped in many locations. Unfortunately, for some, they ended up getting too much rain.
Yeah, and that rain that started down there in Oklahoma, very heavy rain. Texas, obviously, a lot of devastating flooding this summer. Kansas, another state with a lot of heavy rain. And then that pattern, as we got into late June, it marched northward. And so what took off there was basically what I would say was the kind of that gap zone where we were in May and June, and we really didn't have that deep humidity yet. We were just pretty much using the power of the sun, the dry soils. We were heating up a lot, but we didn't have a lot of depth of humidity, any sustainability to it at all in May and June. It was kind of a quick dash, and then it would retreat. And so that kind of sets the tone for, how the summer evolved. But now in the last few days, we've kind of gone back to this old northwest flow again. And say it happens going into September, well, see, that can be that fight between Pacific Northwest hot and Canadian cool, and we kind of wrestle back and forth because here we go, all that weather's coming in from that direction.
And with how wet that it's been, and I like talking about this too, is when we were dry, why do we put these 20% chances on day 6 and 7 when we're in the middle of drought? We're almost giving away false hope. Now that we're wet and we've seen the pattern, sure, go ahead and throw that 20 to 30% chance on day 6 or 7 because that's been the pattern of late.
Yeah, different psychology, different pattern. And so, yeah, at any rate, let's watch what the weekend brings. Even though this system won't have a huge amount of deep humidity, it's still going to produce some rain. And again, that's a map that goes all the way out to September 9th. So
right, and I wanted to show this just because, this low pressure system, they'll try to move through California. When this happens, we get this trough to dig here across the Southwest. We typically get a surge of maybe some warmth and some humidity here for us. And then we'll have to watch and see where this low pressure system goes as it eventually comes out into the central and maybe the northern plains that bring in shower and thunderstorm chances. So as we get into maybe that second week of September, we'll see how active the weather becomes. So if this holds true, I wouldn't be surprised to see a round of showers and thunderstorms move through. And along with it, we could still have severe weather, Brian, when we're talking September.
Well, right. September, if you really look at traditional data on September, it actually should be a peak a little bounce back to severe weather because we anticipate the change of the seasons. But, of course, these patterns this year have not worked out as we would normally say because we didn't have that bump in May and June, early June at least. That was pretty benign. Most of the severe weather was shifted to the last half of the summer, very intense at times. So, yeah, you can kind of put that stat out there, but the reality of the pattern, we'll just see where all of that kind of lays out on the timeline.
Well, here's a look at our rainfall outlook for the next 2 weeks. A lot of it shows up in the western central South Dakota, and that could be that slow-moving low-pressure system that Brian talked about for this coming weekend. And then I think as these temperatures do waffle back and forth, we'll just go with our scattered chances for showers and thunderstorms. And I figured, why not? We're entering September. Let's bring in the snowfall outlook over the next 14 days, almost non-existent, not showing anything across the northern plains. Holiday weekend ahead, and here it is. We need to give a name to this turtle. Oscar, Dolly Doppler or something? I don't know.
I'll assign that to my girls. They love naming animals.
Okay, perfect.
They'll come up with something.
But that's a graphic I made a couple of weeks ago when we had another slow-moving system move through. And here we go for this coming weekend. There's that low-pressure system right along the border, South Dakota and Nebraska. We'll watch for our showers and thunderstorms. That's a look at Saturday afternoon. I would say a better chance across western and central South Dakota. And depending on the cloud cover and the rain, Brian, I wouldn't be surprised to see these temperatures. We do have numbers that are expected to be below average. We'll see how far below they are if we have our thick cloud cover and we have rain in the area.
Yeah, obviously be attentive to that. Right now, still getting some suggestions that we can hold these 70s even with some of the rain, but it tends to kind of interfere with some of those hourly temperatures. So I know as we're planning to be outside, many of us have something probably going on at some point during the course of the 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So my best advice, and I think you'd agree, is just kind of be able to be a little flexible. There might be some times where the rain could come in. The thinking is it's not going to rain all the time. Certainly with a slow-moving system like this, it can kind of push some rain into different spots. But 70s are kind of the average rule right now.
Yeah, and then here's a look at Labor Day itself. We can start with these scattered showers and thunderstorms. They may continue as we do get into the afternoon, and the modeling data suggesting temperatures in the 70s for afternoon highs. That's a look at your latest forecast here on Weather or Not. I want to say thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.